Hello. Thanks for hanging in there, guys. I know it's been a real long time since I've posted anything new. About 5 months, in fact. Pretty close to it. And of course, the irony is on the last video I published, I think it was, I said that I was probably going to take a little break, but that I didn't expect it to be anything crazy like 2 or 3 months. And, look at how life unfolds. It's been about 5. So, sorry for that, but at the same time, it doesn't even feel like 5 months to me. Feels like I just did this, basically. And I like to do it, that's the only reason I'm here. I'm not monetized. It's a hobby, and so that's just kind of how the cookie crumbles sometimes. But I appreciate you guys hanging in there with me over that period. I'm surprised to see that I still have the same number of subscribers, so you guys are awesome and I really appreciate you. But let's get into it. So today I'm going to be talking about Actraiser Renaissance on the Nintendo Switch. For any of you who don't know, this is a remake of a Super Nintendo game which released just a few months after that system launched back in 1991. And yes, I do remember when this was a new release, and I'm sure that some of you out there do as well. The original release was remarkable because there really wasn't anything quite like it at the time, and honestly, that still mostly holds true to this day. It's a relatively unique game in both its concept and its execution. So look, even though I was aware of Actraiser at the time of its release back in the day, I couldn't really tell from the pictures if I would like it or not. Games were more expensive back in the day, relative to the economy at that time, so taking a chance on a game was kind of a big risk. Even weekend rentals were kind of a big decision, and there was always some game that just looked like more of a sure thing to me. So as hard as it is for me to believe, I didn't dive into the original SNES Actraiser until the early 2010s, and I couldn't believe that I had missed the bus for so long on such an unusual gem of a game. Long story short, Actraiser basically consists of side-scrolling levels with somewhat rigid-feeling controls. So similar in that way to Castlevania, but still different. And honestly, in my opinion, not as good, but that doesn't really mean anything. That's a very high bar, in my opinion. So far, no big surprises, right? It's a 2D action game. But after you complete a level, the game switches to a top-down civilization building segment before returning to another side-scrolling level. Now, it's these top-down real-time strategy sections, it's that had me a little concerned back in the day, all those years ago. Games like SimCity, at least at that time, seemed too slow and clunky and just better optimized to be played on a PC than a console. And, to be fair, that's because they were. So as an exclusively console gamer, those games seemed incredibly unappealing to me. I was like, that's not going to work. That just doesn't look like a good weekend to me. So whatever. However, when I finally got around to playing Actraiser, like I said, in the early 2010s, I was completely captivated by these top-down strategy sections in Actraiser. They seem to be very carefully designed for play on a console, as well they should be. And I found them to be surprisingly accessible and fun, and they also just serve as a nice break from the side-scrolling action levels. So now I'm going to switch gears a little bit. So what I've described so far is really could be applied to either the original Actraiser or this remake. But now I'm going to switch gears and focus more specifically on the remake, because they did alter the strategy segments. And I'm sorry, I'm not going to go through and break down every difference, every change that they made. I'll just say this. I feel like in the remake, in Actraiser Renaissance, they made the side-scrolling action levels, actually, if you can believe it, a little bit easier, and they made the top-down strategy sections longer, more frequent, more involved in some ways, and then in other ways simplified them. So ultimately, I feel like they improved the side-scrolling action segments, and you could argue that they made the strategy segments a little worse. Personally, I just view it as different. But anyway, so basically what you do in these strategy segments is you direct your followers to where you want them to expand their territory on the map. And then what they actually build seems to be decided automatically in this remake. So they could build farms that produce food, which increases your population capacity and heals you. They can produce workshops that produce building materials, and you can build homes which increase your actual population, not your population capacity. But as far as what gets built, it seems to be automatic. So in these strategy sections, you have to cast spells to clear natural obstacles. You might send down lightning or rains or whatever the case may be to clear natural obstacles so that your followers can develop their land further. All the while, you control your right-hand angel. Right, so I skipped over that. Your main character is a deity of light, by the way, and whatever, we can talk more about that later, but in the strategy sections, you're playing as like Archangel or something. And so you have to fend off monsters in real time who will destroy your civilization if you don't smite those monsters in a timely fashion. So all of this is happening. You're building things, you're moving your little angel around, you're casting spells, and it just felt like exactly the right amount of multitasking for someone like myself who tends to prefer his strategy turn-based instead of real time. So in other words, Actraiser pushed me a little bit outside of my comfort zone, but just enough so that it was a novel, enjoyable experience, and not so much that I hated it. You know what I mean? So it's a good thing. For hardcore real-time strategy fans, it might be a little too simplistic, I would imagine, but for a console gamer who had little to no exposure to that genre, it was a great introduction. Also, some of the side-scrolling levels could be pretty intense, especially on your first time through. So these top-down sections kind of felt like a nice, chill little break. Although in this remake, they're not always so chill. They can actually be the biggest source of frustration in the game, in my opinion. I didn't take to the strategy sections in this remake as quickly as I did in the original, but they grew on me. I know, like, a lot of people have really complained about the changes that they made in that regard, but it's okay, it's just different. So anyway, my point being, expect that this game may provide some initial not just challenge but frustration before you hit your stride and really get pulled in. But once that happens, it only continues to get better, in my opinion, and so it's worth the investment if you can push through. The soundtrack in this game is a 10 out of 10 for me. It's like if Antonio Vivaldi came out with a new record. There are truly some great classical, or more accurately, Baroque compositions. Feel free to correct me if I'm wrong. I'm not a music scholar. I do enjoy it. I'm a music enthusiast, but I don't claim to know everything. But some of the music here in Actraiser Renaissance sounds very reminiscent of something you might expect to hear from Antonio Vivaldi or Johann Sebastian Bach, to me, which are technically Baroque era composers, which is earlier than the classical period, and in my opinion, mostly more enjoyable. Anyways, hopefully you enjoyed that little love nugget of classical music history. Anyways, I had a great time playing through the main game of this remake. I spent some time in a post-game area that you unlock, but I never did finish that. All told, I spent a little over 30 hours with Actraiser Renaissance. The main game probably took me 20-something hours, which I believe is longer than the average that you will find listed online. But that's semi-typical. I tend to spend a little bit longer with games. It's a 3.4 gig download, and it normally sells for $30 on the eShop, which is, in my estimation, a little too much. I think $15 or $20 feels like the sweet spot for this one to me. Fortunately, it is on sale in the US region for $15 for a couple of more days. From the time of this recording, the sale ends on March 26th, 2025 at 2:59 in the morning. I believe that's Eastern Time, EDT. We'll see how quick I can get this video out, but if I miss that window, wishlist it, it'll go on sale again. That does it for this one. Thanks for tuning in. Click all the happy YouTube buttons if you thought this was worth your time, and I'll see you next time, whenever that may be. I'm not even going to try to guess. Bye-bye.